Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for us to move to another topic, which is a quest for the eternal Sufism in South Asia. I would now like to call upon Alan Godless. Dr. Godless was nominated for a Webby Award in 2002 for his quote, Islam and Islamic Studies, thus included in the 500 most influential Muslims in the world, 2009 to 2012. Recent articles and major presentations of his deal with Sufi Quran commentary. Dr. Alan Godless is Associate Professor of Regional Islamic Studies at the University of Georgia. Can I please have you on stage, sir? Can I have loud hands of applause for the same? I would now like to call upon Carl Ernst. Carl W. Ernst is an academic specialist in Islamic and Indian studies. He studied comparative religion at Stanford University and Harvard University. His research has focused on pre-modern and contemporary Sufism, and he has published extensively on Arabic and Persian texts about yoga. I would now like to call upon Hassan Karim Guj. He is a founding member of the Karim Foundation and a board member. He continues his work on Sufi studies individually in the MA program of Sufi culture and literature at the Institute. Gentlemen, I would please request you to please initiate the session. Thank you so much for coming.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Greeting of peace, salam to everybody, including the organizers of Earth Conclave. It's an honor to be here, sharing, learning, and also moderating this panel about Sufism in South Asia and beyond. Most of you have heard about Ajmer Sharif. You know about the essence of spirituality and Sufism across India. In today's time, it has been brought in the forefront with music element, primarily with Qawwali. And right here in Delhi, at the center of Delhi, we have Nazar Nizamuddin Aulia. And over here, we have some of the most distinguished panelists among us who have taken this wisdom through an academic career and shared this on a platform where high-level and very deep research studies have been conducted, published by themselves and their students who have studied under them from all over the world. The introduction has been done, of course, of Professor Alan Godless, Professor Carl Ernst, our brother Karim from Istanbul. But to me personally, it's an honor to be with them because they are someone, especially Professor Carl and Alan Godless, that I have been looking up to them right from my days of initiating this academic studies in Sufism in South Asia and beyond. Professor Carl has been here on a Fulbright scholarship, extensively studied about the Chishtiya philosophy of the Deccan in Khuldabad and Aurangabad, and has published some very amazing books. One of my personal favorite, where he wrote about the intense ishq, the intense love that the Sufis have for the creation that ultimately leads them in closeness to the Creator. The book name is Sufi Martyrs of Love, the Chishtis of South Asia. In Urdu, it's translated in another beautiful sentence that says, Shahidan-e-Ishq, who have given themselves to serve in the best manners the society, which yield the results today we see in India as the Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, the Sufi Bhakti traditions, and many gifts of unity in the great diversity that India upholds. And that really strengthens us and bind us together with these spiritual traditions across the board. So I would like to have a few words, the initiating words from Professor Karls on his view about the regional impact and his studies that over the years, his illustrious career, have shared with youth, with elders, not only in India, but across the world. So over to you, Professor Karls.
Well, thank you very much, Salman. It's great to be on the platform with you again, as we have done in the past. And it's an honor and a privilege to be with you today on this panel. Sufism is a subject that is popular these days, as Salman mentioned, particularly in the form of musical performance, which reaches vast audiences now through internet sites and in which Qawwali music is presented to the world. What do we mean by Sufism? I think the panelists may come up with different responses. I tend to define it as a tradition of spiritual and ethical practice that has been associated with Muslim societies, but which also has openings beyond that. And I'd like to just point to a couple of ways in which Sufism in the Indian subcontinent has taken on the color of the local culture and specific identities, because there is, in my view, there is not something that is a generic form of Sufism that is always the same and is found everywhere. In fact, something is quite reverse to that. Namely, Sufi traditions are local. They belong to a place, which is physically suggested by the concreteness of the shrine of a great Sufi master, which is in a particular location, and which is tied up with networks of teachers and students and followers, which are, again, local. And so this always means that when people talk about Sufism, they will speak about specific examples that are close to them. And this shows up in a couple of ways in India. Now, the first people that we identify as Sufis started to show up perhaps a little over 1,000 years ago. And Data Sahib, Sheikh Ali Hujwiri, the author of the famous Kashful Mahjub, the revelation of the veiled, he's buried in Lahore. And he came from outside. There were lots of people who were from Central Asia and Iran and other regions who came to India. But once this became implanted, starting a little after 1200 in this region, in Delhi and northern India, people grew up in India, and this is very important, speaking a mother tongue that was Indian. And we're going to hear some more about Persian from my good friend and colleague, Dr. Alan Godless. But the use of Indian vernacular languages for important literary compositions had not been encouraged by the dominance of Sanskrit, which, like Latin in medieval Europe, had more or less crowded out the local languages, which were considered to be not worthy of serious literary composition. And so people like Dante had to struggle to get Italian recognized as a literary language. In northern India, Sufis were the ones who, speaking their local languages, introduced wonderful literary compositions in Awadhi, that is to say Eastern Hindi, and in Gujarati, they called it Gujari in the old days, written in the Arabic script, in Dakkani Urdu, and in Bengali, and so forth. And there was a big controversy last year when we were at the Jaipur Literature Festival, where some people objected to the fact that Malik Mohammed Jayasi had written a very powerful story of Padmavat in Eastern Hindi, in Awadhi. And there were some people who objected to the fact that a Muslim was writing about this Indian love story with kings and queens falling in love through romantic stories and kings masquerading as yogis and the like. But this is the kind of story that Malik Muhammad Jayasi must have grown up with. And so it seems perfectly natural that it would become the vehicle for teaching and for communication in a way that would reach the ordinary person who would not be able to get access to the Persian and Arabic texts of the literary elite. So there is a lot that could be said about this, but I would just like to point out this important fact that the use of Indian languages by Sufi writers and Amir Khosrow is attributed with numerous compositions in an old form of Hindi, which is still kept alive in the musical tradition today. This is a deep engagement with the local culture of India. And I want to mention one other example, and I'll just do this kind of briefly because our time is short. And this is the engagement of Sufis with yoga practice. Now, this at first sight seems a little bit surprising, but there is a number of texts that is circulated in Arabic and more extensively in Persian and in Turkish and in Urdu, which many of which were related to a series of teachings known as the Amrita Kunda, the pool of nectar. And this series of writings I first began to encounter over, more than 20 years ago, when I went to Istanbul for the first time to look for manuscripts of the Arabic version of this, because this was where most of the copies ended up in Istanbul, because the people like the Mevlevi dervishes, the whirling dervishes, the followers of Rumi, were still copying out these texts and translating them into Turkish in the 1890s. And there are many versions of these that are circulated in India, and I'll just mention one of them. Sheikh Muhammad Ghaus of Gwalior, who was the teacher of the great musician Tansen, translated a version of this under the title of The Ocean of Life. And what is remarkable about this Persian text is that it contains the oldest known portraits of yogis performing yoga asana postures in a manuscript that was copied out in 1605 and was prepared expressly for Jahangir when he was waiting around for his father to die. And this is amazing because it indicates that both in Sufi circles and in royal circles, there was a deep interest in the practices of yoga. And I've been wrestling with this particular problem for many years, and I'm hoping to publish the final translations of them soon, but I think you will find them quite surprising and intriguing. But if that isn't Indian, I don't know what is. So that is my opening remark, which is to say that these are two really important areas where Sufis engaged with and really advanced the cultural traditions of India. And I think this needs to be acknowledged and factored into our understanding of the history of India. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Carl and Sayyid Salman and Karim. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Today I will situate Indian Sufism and Qawwali music within a humanistic, culturally pluralistic, but political context in which the praise of Sufis is sometimes seen as virtuous and sometimes contentious. Subsequently, I'll share my translations of 3 Farsi poems sung by Qawwalis, especially because in Sufi Qawwali music, we can find resources for decreasing dehumanization and for strengthening what the Dalai Lama refers to as emotional hygiene. We need to revive such resources that are in each of our world's cultures, because without them, the inherent disease of compulsive egoism, especially in difficult economic times, this disease functions like what the social psychologist Philip Zimbardo calls a cortical cataract, which blinds and subverts religions, ideals, rationality, and empathy, sending our cultures into the dehumanizing violence of clashing civilizations. Fortunately, among the various and competing trends among Indic cultures and ideologies, there is cultural pluralism, especially India's Bhakti tradition, which resonates well with Qawwali music. Nevertheless, in spite of this pluralistic thread in India, often critics have portrayed advocates of cultural pluralism, such as the Emperor Akbar, Dara Shikoh, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and Gandhiji, as emphasizing unity at the expense of Hindu or Islamic identity. In world history, it's certainly true that advocates of cultural pluralism on the one hand, and advocates of strong national and cultural identities, such as Hindutva, on the other hand, have often been at odds. I am hopeful, however, that the more that our world's nations, religions, and cultures rediscover their own resources for enhancing emotional hygiene or emotional intelligence, more people will begin finding that strong cultural and national identities, like in India, will be able to go hand in hand with cultural pluralism. In support of the beginning of a renewal of such harmony, we saw that in March 2016, here in New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi gave the keynote address at the World Sufi Forum, organized by the All India Ulama and Mashayikh Board. Then Prime Minister Modi stated, and I quote, "At a time when the dark shadows of violence are becoming longer, you," referring to Sufis, "are the nur, or the light of hope," end quote. Today, in a similar Indic multicultural spirit, Shreyasi Goyenka and Vikram Sampath have organized Arth, and hence to them and to you, our audience, I extend my gratitude. When governments and financiers fund conferences and festivals devoted to increasing the public's awareness of potentially ironic practices such as Sufism, practices that can enhance wisdom and empathy, skeptics sadly caution us, watch out, you're being used. You are enabling Sufis to be considered good Muslims and non-Sufis as bad Muslims, which politicians use to fuel Islamophobia in the service of their divisive political agendas, not only in India, but in the United States and elsewhere. To such naysayers, we can respond in the spirit of Qawwali music by saying that we are lovers of God, beggars, Gedayan, who will take whatever funding or support that we are given, whatever raises people's awareness of resources for enhancing emotional hygiene, resources for transforming themselves into better human beings, will in the end be beneficial for our cultures, our religions, and our common humanity. At this juncture, I would like to share my translations of 3 Farsi poems sung by Qawwali musicians, poems that can enhance our emotional hygiene, in brief, by evoking in us a variety of emotions, and by reminding us to respond to these emotions with the unconditional gratitude and love of a servant of God. This can enable the emotions to be transformed without the conditioned habits of the ego, inshallah. The first poem is by Amir Khosrow Dehlavi. May you be beautiful, radiant like the moon. May you eternally be in the realm of belovedness, enrapturing hearts. Be khubi hamchu mah tabande bashi, be mulke dilbari payande bashi. You've slain me, a poor dervish, by your amorous glance. You've been generous. May you be filled with life, I pray, O God. Man darvish ra kushti be gamze. Karam kardi ilahi zande bashi. If you come glancing amorously, you'll burn up the world. If you're laughing, you'll pour down sugar's sweetness. Jahan suzi agar dar gamze aayi, shakar rizi agar dar khande bashi. I'll become freed from the chains of both this world and the next if you will be a companion of this humble slave. ز غیر دو جهان آزاد گشتم اگر تو هم نشین بنده باشی. Don't be so cruel, since tomorrow on the last day, when all are gathered, if your cruelty does not lessen, you'll be embarrassed to face the lovers. جفا کم کن که فردا روز محشر ز روی عاشقان شرمنده باشی. If you are brazen and a rogue like Khusro, you will eradicate thousands of homes with all their possessions. Birendi o bishukhi hamchu Khusro hezaran khanuman bar kande bashi. Although this second poem is commonly ascribed to Rumi, only one couplet is actually written by him. The poem begins as follows. تو کریمی من کمینه برده ام لیکن از لطف شما پرورده ام زندگی آمد برای بندگی زندگی بی بندگی شرمندگی. You, God, are the generous one, and I am the lowly servant. But from your benevolence, I've become nurtured. The point of life is to be a servant. Without being a servant, life becomes a disgrace. Remembering God is the funds at the foundation of faith. By remembering God, each beggar can be a sultan. The master and leader is Muhammad, the light of the soul, the greatest and the best intercessor for wrongdoers. Since Muhammad became purified of fire and smoke, wherever he turned, there was the face of Allah. His soul is a falcon of the realm beyond any place. His degree is that he is the mercy for all the worlds. He is the best and greatest of the prophets. There is none like Muhammad on the earth or the heavens. That Muhammad is praised and praiseworthy. Muhammad is praising and praiseworthy. There is none like Muhammad on the earth or the heavens. He is the form of the worshipper who has become the image of God who is worshipped. The saintly friends are God, and God is the saintly friends, meaning whoever has seen one's master has seen the divine glory. Whoever has not seen that one's master and the essence of God are one, he is not a devotee, not a devotee, not a devotee. Mevlana Rumi, our master, could never be the master of Rum of Anatolia if he had not first become a servant of Shams Tabrizi. Now the third and final poem is by Hazrat Shah Niyaz Barelvi. Ashiq bi khabar manam من نمنم نمن منم عارف با هنر منم من نمنم نمن منم. I'm a lover who lacks knowledge of imperfections. I'm neither me nor not me. I'm a Gnostic who has skill. I'm neither me nor not me. سوز دل و جگر منم وحشت پرده در منم دانش بخیتگر منم من نمنم نمن منم. I'm the burning of the heart and liver. I'm the fear of having the veil ripped open. I'm the knowledge of one who sews up veils. I'm neither me nor not me. حسن و جمال حق منم، عز و جلال حق منم، حشمت و جاه و فر منم، من نه منم نه من منم. I'm the loveliness and beauty of the real. I'm the exaltedness and grandeur of the real. I'm dignity, rank, and glory. I'm neither me nor not me. Sufi ba safa manam, bi khudi o ba khuda manam, ahle dil o nazar manam, man namanam naman manam. I'm a Sufi who has purity. I'm without myself, but with God. I'm the folk of the heart and the blessed view. I'm neither me nor not me. Isai Maryami manam, Ahmad Hashemi manam, Haydar Shir nar manam, man namanam, naman manam. I am the Jesus of a Mary. I am the Ahmad of a Hashemi. I'm Ali, Haydar, the courageous lion. I'm neither me nor not me. Raz o niyaz khud manam, suz o gudaz khud manam, karde qadam be sar manam, man na manam, na man manam. I'm myself's mystery and need. I'm myself's burning and melting. I'm one who has stepped on my head, surrendering myself. I'm neither me nor not me. In conclusion, hopefully from hearing this brief presentation, your emotional hygiene has been enhanced, and you have hopefully received a little of the perfume of which Gandhiji spoke when he said, quote, "For me, the different religions are beautiful flowers from the same garden, or they are branches of the same majestic tree." Thank you.
MashaAllah. That was a nectar, those words that touched the souls and hearts of hundreds of people from over hundreds of years, and today reached us in a way that still people who are attuned, who listen to these renditions in Mehfil-e-Sama, in Qawwali, which inshallah after this session, the Mehfil-e-Sama by the Chishti Qawwals of Ajmer Dargah Sharif will be recited. So these similar words which have been written over hundreds of years ago, but even recited today with that compassion and that passion for the longing of the beloved, the attuned listeners still go into deep ecstasy with these vibration and these words. Thank you, Professor Alan Godless, for sharing these words. And as Professor Carl has touched upon the influence and about the regional understanding as we come from Ajmer Sharif, we often have grown up listening to these 4 lines about India, about the land Hindustan, where the elders used to say, "Tera dayar hai dar salam ya Khaja, tajalliyan hai subh o sham ya Khaja, na fikr mein na ghame jam tere maston ko, teri ek nigah se chalta hai kaam ya Khaja." This is the beauty of the land, that people who have been receiving this spiritual benevolence from any corners, they immerse themselves in contentment and satisfaction. And every moment, there is divine ray, the tajalliyat, from heavens to the earth. People are intoxicated with that love where they have no fear and no sorrow. With the blessed glance of the spiritual elders, the day-to-day life goes on. It is so true that wherever the Sufis traveled, they went, they adapted to the local culture, local traditions. As far as the Sharia, the Quran and the Sunnah gave the Ijazah, which is itself universal in its nature. When you look at the tradition of serving food in the Dargah Ajmer Sharif over 800 years every day, A vegetarian meal is served to the people who comes here, whoever comes here. So they are home, they feel content. And numerous tradition of embracing people coming there, not asking their name, their religion, their language, their nationality, just only asking one thing if it need to be asked. What can we do for you? How can we serve you? If in the worldly sense we can serve them, we go out and serve. If not, we raise our hands in prayers and in du'as. That's what the Sufis insisted in serving humanity. Love towards all and malice towards none. That's what Khaja Moinuddin Chishti brought the love back in the 11th century, which is still lived every day in all its practicality, not only in Ajmer Sharif, but across South Asia, all the Chishti Dargahs. With these words about India, we go to Turkey with our dear brother Kareem, who is very much part of a great lineage, the Rifai and the Mevlevi tradition, and his blessed mother, I would say our blessed mother, Sheikha Jamal Nur Hoja, who couldn't come, we would have loved to have her, has been a source of light and a beacon of inspiration to all the young people in Turkey, across universities, across the street, with her words, with her publication. And over to you, Kareem, to share some of that blessed teachings with the people here in India looking up to Turkey.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for... Thank you very much for actually inviting me. Thanks, Alan, for killing this session. After this, I can't say anything because you set the expectation right up there. Well, anyway, I just want to say that I am so happy being here because India is so much, it's like, I feel like I'm at home. Thank you very much. I'm seeing people, this organization, helping people, smiling. This is what all tasawwuf about. And this is, I bring love from Turkey as much as I can. And I accept my apologies in advance for my humble presence in the panel with these guys. These guys are stars of the tasawwuf. My presentation is going to be a little bit about the tasawwuf in modern Turkey. And since we have a limited time, I'm just going to do a little bit of a quick history, a little bit of a snapshot of what we're doing, the methodology in tasawwuf, what we're trying. Now, you may know that, like he mentioned, that we're coming from different orders. I'm actually representing the Rifai order. When I say order, tasawwuf, the ultimate goal is reaching God. And people, different orders have different methods. Doesn't mean any order is better than the other order. It means just we have different methods. In Rifai, we're trying to deal with this stupid ego. We hate it, and we're trying to suppress it. Mevlevis, their method is with love, working with this thing with love. So like I said, they're not better than each other. They're just different methods. In the last century of Ottomans, we had some issues with the Sufi orders. We lost the actual meaning of the Sufis, and because of the misuse, they're closed. The tekkes and the Sufi schools were closed. Now we're trying to find a new methodology to make these things happen again, because tasawwuf is actually the dough of the Turkish civilization. With Seljuks, with Ottomans, every civilization that we were successful with, they were actually ruling the states based on what tasawwuf said to them, because they have teachers, the padishahs, the sultans. They have actually they were students of the Sufi masters. One of them is being, for instance, Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi. We just mentioned his name. And what they did is, there were so many cultures in the same state, and they were actually living happily, because the tasawwuf is actually a thing that unites, not divides. So like the Turks, we say something good When we say something good, we show it that way. We say, this is good, without saying anything. This is good. Why this is good? Because there are 5 different fingers. When those 5 different fingers unite, then it becomes good. But in the last century, we grew away from the real tasawwuf. And now we're trying to come up with a new terminology, new methodology. As our teacher, I was lucky because I'm coming from a dargah. And that dargah was the dargah of Kenan Rifai, one of the important Sufis of 20th century. And he says, the schools were closed. Now the body is the school, the heart becomes our station. And so we tried to come up with this vision. We said, oh, the tekkes can be closed, but we can live tasawwuf through the academia, to the universities. Now, 2 things were important with this vision. 1, tasawwuf, or any kind of religious studies, there is a misunderstanding that they say science. I don't know what science really means, but we use the word knowledge rather than science. They're talking about positive science as if there is some kind of a negative science. There is no such a thing as negative science. Tasawwuf is actually a science, or I would say knowledge, because it has its own ontology. It has its own epistemology. It has its own ethics. And the misconception of the people saying, well, religion and science is 2 different things. But they're not different. Knowledge is only knowledge if it's implemented for the greater good of the humanity and the whole world, including every single creature. So science becomes science if it's for the humanity. Secondly, in the modern world, we have this understanding of as if we have 2 different worlds. We live 2 different worlds, right? We go home, we go to work, and we go home, and we live, and we eat, and we enjoy. That's one world we have. Then we have our divine world. We have values. We have, divinity. But are those 2 worlds really different from each other? Well, the modern world led us to believe that, because when we go to Jami, we go to a church. Okay, now we're in the divine world. But when we work, we have our own work, the materialistic world. No. And tasawwuf is actually trying to find a solution for those 2 problems. And with our foundations, we have a foundation called Turkat, the Women Association. My mother is actually leading a Sufi dargah, and she's woman. And with Kareem Foundation and Turkat Association, what we did is we actually started working on universities. And with Carl's help, was the start. In 2009, we actually established a center in North Carolina, United States, in 2009. And 2 years after that, we did the same thing in China, in the Beijing, University of Beijing. And lastly, in 2016, we worked on the Kyoto University. Now we have 3 centers. But the most important thing we did is actually we did the same thing in 2014 in Istanbul, Turkey, with the University of Üsküdar. But instead of going to theology and divinity school, we actually worked with Üsküdar University, which was actually offering work on psychology, sociology, history, molecular biology, bioengineering, and all that stuff we call science. So the Institute for Sufi Studies aims to become an internationally renowned environment of science and art that will serve humanity in reaching peace and happiness. So, and doing that, like I said, one thing that we had as a, how do I say that? For instance, I'm actually an engineer. I'm coming from an engineering background. So what we believe in is actually the work of multi-disciplines. So if the multi-disciplines work together, we can actually come up with the new things in the divinity, so-called divinity. The Institute aims to raise individuals who have internalized humanistic values, who are sensitive towards art, who think, research, create, and know the value of time, who are hardworking and of great capacity for well-seeing. And the Institute is also working on the problematic areas. Why are we the conflict management? Why do we have these conflicts, for instance? And what can Tasawwuf offer for these? My mother, if my mother was there, she would have given an example with a cup. I don't have a cup, but imagine that there is a cup holder, and this is a cup. And I ask you guys whether the cup holder is, where is the cup holder? On the right or on the left? And I say, show this. Where is it? On the right or on the left? What do you guys say? What do you say? It's here. For you, it's on the left. Can you promise it's on the left? Can you swear? No? I can, if you ask me, I would say it's on the right. And I can swear it's on the right, but you guys are going to swear it's on the left. This is our problem. This is a conflict. And the conflict is so stupid because we cannot look at it from upper side. And the Tasawwuf says, well, perspectives are the most important things. So if you look at it from the right place, and when I say right place, I can't say what is right, what's wrong for you, but what I can say is, it is right or it is wrong based on your perspective. So Tasawwuf is looking for fixing these problems. The Institute will develop joint graduate study programs and projects within the framework of international academic partnership initiated by our foundations I just mentioned. Since the establishment of the Institute, which we did in 2014, over 200 students applied for the graduate program, and almost 1,000 students we have on the certification program. And last year, we did a very nice summer school. And the summer school, we got Carl, we got Sashiko Murata, William Atiq, Jim Morris, Mahmoud Rokulic. These guys are very big guys in the Tasawwuf. And we have 100 students from all over the world. I'm saying 20 countries attended. Now, Istanbul is in a position to be regarded as the natural center of Tasawwuf in Turkey and the world due to its distinguished Islamic Sufi culture. It's multicultural as an imperial legacy, its treasure of Sufi manuscripts and the primary sources, and its role to be a center of science, culture, and art in Turkey. In brief, we believe that real Tasawwuf can be a new global language where different cultures can benefit under an umbrella of peace, understanding, and love. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Brother Kareem. That was such an insight about the important work that your blessed mother and the organization in Turkey has been doing. Primarily, what they're doing is trying to get the spiritual learnings and the academic institutions come together and create a platform for the young generation, for the students, to excel in their academics, at the same time have this openness towards the spiritual legacies of the masters, elders, and also in the 21st century, how they can excel into their worldly careers with that spiritual strength. And primarily one of the same thing that when Professor Allen mentioned about the World Sufi Forum that we did in 2016 right here in Delhi, that was a path-breaking conference where we invited over 200 delegates from around the world, and at the same time, there were the Sufi sheikhs, Peer, or you can say gurus from the Sufi tradition together in the same platform, which often doesn't come together. So that was a very important initiative which follows through all these last 2 years, that a lot of academic conferences have been happening because of that at different dargahs and all the spiritual centers across India. Well, before we depart, one more thing that we would like to touch upon with Professor Carl that he mentioned about the learnings of different spiritual traditions, different religious mystics from each other. And we do know that in India, back in the 12th century and the 13th century, at the Dargah, at the Khanqa of Baba Farid, a lot of yogis, sadhus, and rishis used to come and learn from each other the breathing practices and the meditative practices in that time. And they developed on their own spiritual tradition by learning from each other. So we feel that back in the 12th century, 13th century, they were much more open, and there was no sense of insecurities among different spiritual traditions. But coming back in today's 21st century, do you feel that a sense of insecurity is being developed around the spiritual tradition or the centers, that this open exchange of learning from each other, which was so prominent in those days, is kind of missing, or the younger generation? I mean, like, I would have loved to have some college students here, right here with us, to hear these great scholars and academics on spiritual notes. But what is the message that we can share in the 21st century, looking up to the 12th century? The openness and the lack of insecurities then, and the closeness today, and a sense of insecurities today.
That's really a great question, Salman. And I'd like to add to the remark that I made earlier about all Sufism being local. And I think the extra addition is there is a political and social context as well. And when the Sufi orders began to get formed roughly 1,000 years ago, this is a movement that started off very informally, that was carried out by individuals who were of a similar inclination, who were trying to find a deeper path than the average person in their society. And so the development of structures of authority and lineages and institutions and centers and tombs and all of this took place during a time that we would call, politically speaking, a time of feudalism. And there were many royal dynasties who built shrines for Sufi saints, trying to borrow a little bit of virtue that they had not actually earned by good deeds. But this whole society and structure has basically come to an end with the decline of monarchies and the advent of democratic government and the like. And then there was something new called capitalism that came in, and the printing press and literacy, and everything is different than it was 1,000 years ago, dramatically. So what is happening is that the spiritual quest that we associate with Sufism has to be reconfigured for new social and political conditions. And as Karim was pointing out, the Sufi orders were abolished in Turkey by Kemal Ataturk in the aftermath of the Turkish War of Independence because it was a political force that he did not wish to have competing with him. And in Saudi Arabia, the opposition to the Sufi institutions had a lot of wealth and power. And so that is arguably one of the reasons why the Saudis have suppressed them. So these are factors which we have to take account of. Another example is Senegal in West Africa. You might not have thought about Senegal as a place for Sufism, but 90% of the population belongs to the Sufi orders there. And you may like, Qawwali music, but they have unbelievable traditions of musical performance and so forth. Very powerful. But you have to take account of the fact that there is an immense amount of power involved in these groups, and that's one of the last places where this is still existing. So in places like Indonesia and in Turkey, we're entering a post-tariqa, post-order configuration of Sufism, as whether you call it tasawwuf or Sufism, using the Arabic word or an English word, it is a collection of ideals that people are still going to find important and are going to connect to, but I think that the future is going to be different than the past, and music and the internet and forms of community that are no longer based on face-to-face organizations, we are going to see many different changes taking place in the future. But it will remain a powerful force, nevertheless.
Professor Allen, of course, we would like to add you.
Yeah, just one brief remark. The paths, as Professor Ernst mentioned, and also as Karim and Sayyid Salman have alluded to, in Sufism there are many paths. As the Sufis, going back to Najmuddin Kobra, were fond of saying, there are as many paths as there are the breaths of human beings. And so in certain times when certain doors close, when there may not be a master or a shrine or a dergah or a khanaqah nearby, when those doors close, there are always other doors that open. Especially one of the key features of Sufism, going back to the Quran, is that wherever you turn, there is the face of God, the face of Allah. So this door, even when other doors are closed, the door between, from this, as Sufis will teach, as Sufis teach, the door between each of us and Allah is always open. So as Sufis and humans, as we respond to the changes in each time, it's important to remember that when doors close, other doors open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Allen. Before we wrap up, just Brother Karim would just share a few words, and we might have a couple of questions.
Sure. Just wanted to say a couple things, and like the gentleman said, great things. One, maybe something that I might want to add is when they were closed, the tariqas were closed in Turkey. I'm a publisher right now, and I'm actually working on that a little bit too. And it seems like, we have the tendency to blame Atatürk a little bit, but it seems like when he closed the schools, they were kind of like a misuse. And I'm actually finding a lot of documents that he wanted to actually open the schools in a way that they actually become beneficial for the nation. But from the historical point of view, there were a lot of misuse of the tariqas at that time.
Thank you for your words. As Professor Allen has beautifully put about the doors, that the doors are never closed. Maybe it seems obvious and to the eyes, but the hearts are always open. I would just close this session with this beautiful quote of Maulana Rumi, and which is so apt that I always say this for our own land in India, that where he said, "Baza, baza, haranche hasti baza. Baza, baza, haranche hasti baza. Sad bar gar to bashikasti baza. Idargai ma na umidin nist. Idargai ma umidast, umidast, umidast." Come, 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 whoever you are, come. Even if you have broken your vows of repentance, come. Our doors is not the doors of despair. Our doors is the door of hope, hope, and hope. And truly with this word, and so much of legacies and the spiritual traditions across India, we all can unite together, as the elders have been, to truly make India the door of hope, not only for the Indians, but for the whole world, as per our spiritual tradition. So thank you, Professor Allen. Professor Carl and Brother Kareem for these words. And really, this is a moment that we all should reflect about this gift, the Muqaddas Amanat, the sacred trust that has been entrusted not only to the academics, to the spiritual leaders, but all of us as a human being that has been come from our parents, from our teachers, and how we can live up to the duties of that sacred trust. Thank you. As I just look at the organizers, there might be a couple of questions that we can take if anybody from the audience would like to ask any questions, or we can just go forth to the Mahfil Sama, that is the Qawwali by Shahi Qawwals of Ajmeri Dargah, which is of course the food for the soul. So if any questions are there, you can raise a hand. You can direct to any of the academics. Yep.
I have a question that if somebody is totally into, following a religion, then is it really possible to go towards Sufism? Or it's just a fragment of a religion, a peripheral, idea?
I think we can look to history to see if this has actually happened or not. And the truth is that there have been people from different religious traditions who have engaged with Sufism very seriously. Like the Christian philosopher Ramon Lull from Mallorca in the 14th century, who wrote a little book about love that is modeled on Sufi texts from Arabic. Or the grandson of Moses Maimonides, the great Jewish philosopher, wrote texts in Judeo-Arabic inspired by Sufi thought. And I would add that in India, there is a very long tradition of Hindu scholars who were proficient in Persian in the service of the courts of the Mughals and other kingdoms. And a number of them wrote profoundly informed treatises in Persian on Sufi themes. Then I'm thinking of one scholar in particular, we were just talking about this earlier before the program, who was secretary to the king of Benares in 1800. And he wrote commentary in Persian on the Arabic poetry of Ibn Arabi in his Fusus al-Hikam. And it's clear from the way he talks about it that he was convinced that it would be possible to relate to the ideas like the perfect human being, al-insan al-kamil, without having to join a different religion. So some people have thought it was possible in the past, and I think that's the best answer I could give.
Yes, please, Professor Alan.
Yeah, I would say I'm an example, at least in the beginning, of someone who was anti-religion, and then who found a Sufi way. Even though it's completely coincidental that my name is Godless, it's not quite godless, it's Godlas, but it was coincidental. Certainly, when I first embarked on the path, I was anti-religion, and it was through following certain threads that I had found in my life. One, a thread in nature, in the beauty of the way things fit together ecologically, the beauty of minute elements of nature, like an insect or a leaf. Things like this struck me and drew me beyond myself. And on the other hand, from within myself, my emotional turmoil, this also drew me beyond myself, but from myself. So I didn't come to Sufism through religion. What happened, though, is after following the trail from the amazing elements of nature that we see all around us, from following that trail beyond nature, and from following the trail of transforming how my own emotions could be, specifically my turmoil, could be transformed. I made it to a place, or was brought to a place, where I could then see certain beauties of the world's religions. Some people so we call those, in Sufism, we call those the book of nature and the book of oneself. The scripture of nature and the scripture of oneself. For me, those two scriptures were open, but the sacred scriptures that we normally speak of, the sacred books of the world's religions, those were closed to me, and they only opened after I was able to follow the book of nature and the book of myself into some place beyond all of those. Now, some people, the book of nature and the book of themselves are closed, and the only book that's open is the book of one religion, let's say. And then they discover, they may never get to appreciating the scriptures of other religions, and they may never get to appreciating the scripture of nature or the scripture of themselves. Each person's journey in that way is different. But certainly, just to answer your question, yes, I think someone who is anti-religion it's possible, maybe even more common than you might think, in these times when the world's religions are really minefields of suffering for many people. It is more common than you might think that people make it from an anti-religious perspective to a Sufi way. They may never be able to appreciate the world's religions, but they can certainly get to a level of being that transcends their ordinary, or their life as it was before they started the path. Thank you. Great question.
Well, thank you, Sir Alan, for adding to that. It's absolutely, we conclude on this note that, as I said earlier, it's about the heart, and the Sufis always focus not on the name, not on the religion, not on the nationality. They focus on the human heart, and no words, no action, no behavior should break our human heart. And that's what the tasawwuf is, a life of service towards all. And that's what take you close to the Creator when we submerge in a life of serving towards the creation. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
तो भीख मिल जाए, आका भर दो झोली, भर दो झोली मेरी या मोहम्मद, लौट कर मैं ना जाऊंगा खाली। भर दो झोली मेरी या मोहम्मद, लौट कर मैं ना जाऊंगा खाली। भर दो झोली, भर दो झोली, मैं दो झोली, भर दो झोली मेरी या मोहम्मद, लौट कर मैं न जाऊंगा खाली। झोली मेरी सरकारे मदीना भर दो झोली मेरी ताजदारे मदीना भर दो झोली मेरी सरकारे मदीना भर दो झोली मेरी तुम ज़माने के मुख्तार हो या नबी बेकसों के मददगार हो या नबी सबकी सुनते हो अपने हो या गैर हो सबकी सुनते हो अपने हो या गैर हो सबकी सुनते हो अपने हो या गैर हो तुम गरीबों के गम खार हो या नबी भर दो झोली मेरी सरकारे मदीना भर दो झोली मेरी ताजदारे मदीना भर दो झोली मेरी सरकारे मदीना भर दो झोली भर दो झोली मेरी या मोहम्मद लौट कर मैं ना जाऊंगा खाली कि कुछ नवासों का सदका अता हो कुछ नवासों का सदका अता हो दर पे आया हूँ बन के सवाली कुछ नवासों का सदका अता हो दर पे आया हूँ बन के सवाली कुछ नवासों का सदका अता हो दर पे आया हूँ बन के सवाली हक से पाई वो शानी करीमी मरहबा दोनों आलम के वाली हो मरहबा दोनों आलम के वाली हो हक से पाई वो शानी करीमी मरहबा दोनों आलम के वाली और उसकी किस्मत का चमका सितारा उसकी किस्मत का चमका सितारा जिस पे नजरे करम तुमने डाली उसकी किस्मत का चमका सितारा जिस पे नजरे करम तुमने डाली उसकी किस्मत का चमका सितारा बख्श दी बंदगी को आबरूदी ने हक़ी बचा ली हो आबरूदी ने हक़ी बचा ली हो आबरूदी ने हक़ी बचा ली सितारा उसकी नजरे करम तुमने डाली उसकी किस्मत का चमका सितारा जिस पे नजरे करम तुमने डाली लौट कर मैं ना जाऊंगा वाले लौट कर मैं ना जाऊंगा वाले मनस्तु मनम गुलाम अली अली मनस्तो मनम गुलाम अली मनस्तो मनम गुलाम अली हजार जान गिरामी विदा मनाम अली खुदा भी न रोकेगा महशर में मुझको खुदा भी न रोकेगा महशर में मुझको मैं जन्नत में कहता चला जाऊंगा खुदा भी न रोकेगा महशर में मुझको मैं जन्नत में कहता चला जाऊंगा अली को याद करो दिल से फरियाद करो
अली को याद करो दिल से फरियाद करो
अली को
याद करो दिल से फरियाद करो
मुश्किलों के हैं ये मुश्किल कुशा
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम
रखते हैं लाज वो हमारी हरदम
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम 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 रखते हैं लाज वो हमारी हरदम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम
रखते हैं लाज वो हमारी हरदम
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम
अली मौला मौला अली अली मौला
अली मौला या मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला हे मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला हे मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला हम मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला हम मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला
कादरी चिश्ती सोहर वर्दी तेरे दर के गदा सबका तू ही रहनुमा मौला अली मुश्किल कुशा
सबका तू ही रहनुमा मौला अली मुश्किल कुशा
अली दी वीर हो बलवान हो धरती पिता तुम हो कठिन हारे
जगत के ईश्वर के सूरमा तुम हो
अनोखी उम्र लीला है
खुदा जाने के क्या तुम हो अनोखी तुम्हारी लीला है खुदा जाने के क्या तुम हो
कहीं धर्मात्मा तुम हो कहीं परमात्मा तुम हो
अली मौला अली मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला अली अली मौला 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 अली मौला अली मौला अली अली मौला
बने सूफी जज्बात में बहने वाले और कलंदर बने
इश्क में जलने वाले बुलंदर बने इश्क में जलने वाले
और कुतुब बन गए रंजो गम सहने वाले
वो तो बन गए रंजो गम सहने वाले
नबी है अली को वली कहने वाले
नबी है अली को वली कहने वाले
वली बन गए या अली कहने वाले
अली मौला अली मौला अली 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 मौला अली मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला अली अली मौला अली मौला
अली को याद करो दिल से फरियाद करो मुश्किलों के वो मुश्किल कुशा
अली मौला अली मौला अली दम दम Ali Mola Ali Mola Ali Dam Dam 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 Ali Mola Ali Mola Ali Dam
अपनी छब बनाए के
अपनी छब बनाई के
सोपी के पास गई
अपनी छब बनाई के सो में पी के पास गई
अपनी छब बनाई के सो में पी के पास गई जो देखी पीऊ की छब तो अपनी भूल गई छापू तिलक सब छीनों से नैना मिला के छापू तिलक सब छीनों से नैना मिला के छापू तिलक सब छीनों से नैना मिला ली मीरे मोसे नैना मिलाए सुध बुध सब हर ली मीरे मोसे नैना मिलाए सुध बुध सब हर ली मीरे मोसे नैना मिलाए प्रेम भटी का मदवा पिला के प्रेम भटी का मदवा पिला के प्रेम भटी का मदवा पिला के मतवाली ओ मतवाली कर दी मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के मतवाली कर दी मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के उन्हें ना मिला के मोसे उन्हें ना मोसे नैना मिला के मोसे नैना मिला के मोसे नैना मिला के गोरी गोरी बैया हरी हरी चुड़िया गोरी गोरी बैया हरी हरी चुड़िया गोरी गोरी बैया गोरी गोरी बैया हरी हरी चुड़िया बैया पकड़ हर ली मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के बैया पकड़ हर ली मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के बल बल जाऊं मैं जाऊं निसा निसा नि मग मग पानी सा निसा ग मग सा निसा ग म पा ए बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रंगीला बल बल जाऊं बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रजीवा और अपनी सी रंग दी नीले मोसे नैना मिला के अपनी सी रंग दी नीले मोसे नैना मिला के अपनी सी रंग दी नीले मोसे नैना मिला के खुसरो निजाम के खुसरो निजाम के खुसरो निजाम के खुसरो निजाम के बल बल जाइए खुसरो निजाम के बल बल जाइए खुसरो 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 निजाम के बल बल जाइए मोहे सुहागन की मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के मोहे सुहागन की मेरे मोसे नैना मिला के नैना मिला के मोसे नैना मिला के बल बल जाऊं मैं तो 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 बल 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 जाऊं मैं तो बल बल जाऊं मैं तो बल बल जाऊं इस बात में शक कोई खुदा की कसम नहीं इस बात में शक कोई खुदा की कसम नहीं जैसा जैसा मेरा सनम है किसी का सनम नहीं मैं तो बल बल जाऊं मैं तो बल बल जाऊं मैं तो बहुत खूबसूरत है मेरा सनम बहुत खूबसूरत है मेरा सनम पढ़त 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 मोरी उम्र बीती पर पढ़ न सकी एक पारा।
पढ़त पढ़त मोरी उम्र बीती पढ़ न सकी एक पारा।
पढ़त 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 मोरी उम्र बीती पर पढ़ न सकी एक पारा। जब से तोरी सूरत देखी पड़ गई थी 100 पारा।
मैं तो बल बल जाऊं, मैं तो बल बल जाऊं, मैं तो बल
खुसरो निजाम के बल बल जई मोहे मोहे सुहागन की नीरे मोसे नैना मिला।
मोहे सुहागन की नीरे मोसे नैना मिला।
मोसे नैना मिला के मोसे नैना मिला के मोसे हसन आलम पनाह बसूए माँ गरीबा यक निगाह बहक खाजे उस्मान हारून मदद कुन या मोइनुद्दीन चिश्ती। या गरीब नवाज हाथ जोड़ बिनती करूं जो कुछ मर्जी हो तुम।
हाथ जोड़ बिनती करूं,
हाथ जोड़ बिनती, हाथ जोड़ बिनती करूं या गरीब नवाज हाथ जोड़ बिनती करूं। सो सुनो गरीब नवाज,
तुम तो ख्वाजा बेगरज हो, गरज बड़ी है मोह।
तुम तो ख्वाजा बेगरज हो, गरज पड़ी है
कृपा करो महाराज मोइनुद्दीन,
कृपा करो महाराज मोइनुद्दीन, कृपा करो महाराज
ख्वाजा मोइनुद्दीन,
कृपा करो महाराज
या मोइनुद्दीन,
कृपा करो महाराज।
मो पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा,
मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा, मोह पे कृपा
करो ख्वाजा,
मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा, मोह पे कृपा
करो
ख्वाजा, मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा, मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा, मोह
न करोगे तो कर्म कौन करेगा?
जब तुम न करोगे तो कर्म कौन करेगा?
झोली मेरी तुम्हारे सिवा कौन भरेगा? ख्वाजा महाराजा
कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, 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 कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे।
या गरीब नवाज हमारे दस्त तलब में तुम्हारा हाथ रहे,
हमारे दस्ते तलब में तुम्हारा हाथ रहे। हमारे दस्ते तलब में तुम्हारा हाथ रहे।
खुदा के घर भी हमारा तुम्हारा साथ रहे। ख्वाजा
मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह।
या गरीब नवाज अता कीजिए मुई ख्वाजा गयासु दीन का सदका मैं तुमसे मांगता हूँ। पीर कुतुबुद्दीन का सदका, फरीदुद्दीन का सदका, निजामुद्दीन का सदका,
फरीदुद्दीन का सदका, निजामुद्दीन का सदका,
अलाउद्दीन का सदका, नसीरुद्दीन का सदका,
अलाउद्दीन का सदका, नसीरुद्दीन का सदका।
तुम्हारे पीर मुर्शिद हजरत उस्मान का सदका,
तुम्हारे पीर मुर्शिद हजरत उस्मान का सदका।
मेरी बिगड़ी बना दो तुमने लाखों की बनाई है। ख्वाजा
मोह पे कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, कृपा करो ख्वाजा मोह पे, कृपा करो ख्वाजा
मुँह पे कृपा करो।
महाराज मोइनुद्दीन कृपा करो महाराज।
मुँह पे न अपनी छब बनाए के लाली मोरे लाल की सोचत देखूं तो लाल
लाली मोर लाल की ओ जिद देखूं तो
लाली
लाली मोरे लाल की सोचित देखूं तो लाल।
लाली देखन में गई सो में भी हो गई
लाल मोरी पति लाल मोरी पति रखियो भला झूले लाल मोरी पति रखियो भला झूले लालन सिद्धीदा शेवरदा सभी शाबाद कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अलीदा पहला नंबर वो दमादम मस्त कलंदर अलीदा पहला नंबर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अलीदा पहला नंबर वो दमादम मस्त कलंदर समादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त हो दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर हो दमादम मस्त कलंदर 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 शाह नजफ ने तुहे अंग लगाया शाह नजफ ने तुहे अंग लगाया मुश्किल कुशाई वाला रंग चढ़ाया मुश्किल कुशाई वाला रंग चढ़ाया नाम अली हूँ नाम अली हूँ सोए भाग जागा झूले लालन शेवरदा सती शाबाद कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर अलीदा पहला नंबर हो दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाबाद कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर पीरों में मेरा पीर अहे पीरों में मेरा पीर सब दावली है पीरों में मेरा पीर सब दावली है लक़ब सदुल्लाह नाम अली है लक़ब सदुल्लाह नाम अली है नाम अली हूँ नाम अली सोए भाग जागा झूले लालन सिद्धीदा शेवरदा सखी शाबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाबाज कलंदर झनन झनन तोरी नौबत बाज झनन झनन तोरी नौबत बाज लाल बजे घड़ी याल भला झूले लालन लाल बजे फजले पंजतन पांच नारे पंजतन के एक नारा हैदरी दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम पहला नंबर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी शाबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर सखी
शाहबाज कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर
दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर दमादम मस्त कलंदर जज़ाक जज़ाक
खोजो 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 खोजो